I remember all the doctors and nurses kind of just running around frantically and shooing my parents out of the room. And I took a real nosedive. And that night I had a 50% chance of survival, which obviously survived. And I don't remember much after that. It's pretty blurry, but I ended up getting a heart transplant.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Tales from the Grips. I am here with Trey. Trey, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Trey. I am an alcoholic, mainly a drug addict, though. I say alcoholic because I go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. But I have done every drug under the sun. IV user. If you could break it down in water and put it in a needle, I would put it in my arm. So, but I just say alcoholic out of respect for the program I got sober in.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, you came, I had on Parrish last week, and you came highly recommended.
Yeah.
He was like, you got to get him on the podcast. I was like, cool, bring him, man.
Yeah.
So it's a pleasure to have you.
Awesome. Yeah. Happy to be here.
Yes, sir. So you want to tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. Just like a condensed version.
Nah, man. You listen. This is limitless. We could be here like 5 hours. You telling your story. Oh, we could be here. 45 minutes.
Yeah, it'll probably be the 45 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I want to hear it. I want to hear about you. Where you're from.
Yeah, sure. So I was born in North Carolina to a very loving family, very loving parents. Upper middle class. My upbringing was very typical, nothing crazy. I always start off my story at the age of 11 when I was at soccer practice and we were running laps, and all of a sudden I got really sick and started puking, and had to go home, and for the next few weeks I just was vomiting a ton. I couldn't hold anything down, no fluids, no food. And I was going to see these doctors, and they would just see that they would look at the symptoms and kind of just push me through and said it was a stomach virus. But I was getting sicker and sicker. And so my mom knew something was really wrong. So she took me to a doctor named Noah Archer, and he saw like very, very clearly with just looking at my hearing my heart and looking at my neck veins that I was in severe heart failure. And he said my heart sounded like a freight train beating inside my chest, and my neck veins were bulging. So he quickly did a EKG and echocardiogram, and saw that I was in severe heart failure. And so I went to the hospital in New Hanover County, North Carolina. And I had no idea at this point. I just thought I was really sick. I didn't know what was going on. My mom knew. And so I go in there, and they give me IV fluids, and I start feeling a lot better. And this nurse comes in, and she's like, "So has anybody in your family had heart problems before?" And I'm 11 years old. I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Like what? Like completely out of left field. My mom, gets super pissed off because she wanted to tell me, to break that news to me. And so it kind of just hit me, that something's seriously wrong. So I get flown to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and in the helicopter. And they take me down into the ICU, or the PICU, and I remember all the doctors and nurses kind of just running around frantically and shooing my parents out of the room. And I took a real nosedive. And that night I had a 50% chance of survival, which obviously survived. And I don't remember much after that. It's pretty blurry, but I ended up getting a heart transplant because of it. I was there, I think it was 3 weeks, and I got a heart. There was a false alarm for a heart, which I vaguely remember, but I get the heart, and it's the heart from an 11-year-old boy named Justin, and I was 11 at the time. So I think all the shit that I put the heart through, all the the cocaine and the heroin and all that stuff, it was very beneficial. I got the same age heart to deal with all that,
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I get the heart, and I rehab really pretty quickly. You lay in a hospital bed, you lose all your muscle atrophy. You have to completely relapse all your muscle. I have to learn how to walk again and all that. But I did that within like 2 weeks. And didn't really have any issues. That was God's been watching over me for a long time, and it still does to this day. And that's just one of those things. And I was so selfish for such a long time that I was so angry at God, and just do it. Had this whole victim mentality, like, why this happened to me, why did God do this to me when it's such a blessing that I'm still here. But anyway, so I get the heart, and my mom's a math teacher, so she kind of homeschooled me to get me back up to speed to where I was with the rest of the class, and things were pretty good. Started playing sports again, doing school, all that.
And how quickly was you able to play sports again after
pretty quickly
getting a new heart at 11?
Yeah, pretty like within. I remember going back to school and they were all playing a soccer game, and I just kind of hopped back in, which probably wasn't the best idea, but I remember it was a very quick. I guess because you're so young, you can bounce back pretty quick from that kind of thing.
Yeah. From like a month to 2 months.
It's probably 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah, 6 months, something like that.
So I know that, like, being a nurse, I know that you have to take like a lot of autoimmune, immune suppressing drugs. So you had to start taking a lot of drugs like that when you were 11 years old.
Yeah, I still do.
Okay, you still do. Yeah. To keep your body, for people that's listening, it keeps your body from rejecting.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the biggest thing with a transplanted organ is rejection. Your white blood cells try to attack it, even though it's keeping you alive. It's still a foreign object in your body. And I had no issues with that. I've had 4 stents, but I think that was due to smoking crack and shooting cocaine.
Yeah, that might do it.
That'll do that to anybody. So, yeah.
Wow. So shout out to Justin.
Yeah, shout out to Justin for sure. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So there's a few things that really are my addiction and alcoholism are due to from the transplant. One being, when you get a heart transplant, you have to have heart caths where they go through your artery. When I was young, they went through my artery in my neck. Now they go through my femoral artery. But and they go down and take pictures and take samples and whatnot. But they give you fentanyl and Versed to do that. So I was, getting fentanyl and Versed at 11, 12, 13 and up, still do when I go and get it. And I remember being 12 years old and telling my mom, I don't care about the pain. I just like the medicine they give me. And, I didn't know what these things were. I just liked the way they made me feel. And I remember leaving the heart cast and kind of coming down and crying because I wanted to keep feeling that way. I didn't understand. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I was so young, but I loved that feeling even then. And then I find it later in life, and I was off to the races.
Yeah.
So yeah, but like I said, the life was pretty good. I was, living life. Kind of had I was so young, but I understood the magnitude of it. How people were, I could tell by people's reactions. It was a big deal. So I had a new lease on life, I guess you could say. And then, my parents and doctors would always say that I could never drink or use drugs, which you probably shouldn't drink and use drugs with a transplanted heart. But I remember, I don't remember the first time that I shot heroin, the first time I smoked weed, but I do remember the first time that I got drunk and drank alcohol. I was in Cozumel, Mexico on a cruise with a buddy of mine. And he had been drinking the whole time, like sneaking drinks, and his parents had been giving him drinks. And I think we were like 13, 14, something like that. And so we're in Cozumel. We had just gone horseback riding, and there was this party afterwards. And he was just going up, and they were just giving him rum and cokes or Coronas or whatever. They didn't care how old he was. I was watching him just get drunk, and I was like, oh, screw it. I'm just gonna try it,
Yeah.
And I did. I remember taking a few drinks and nothing happened. I'm like, this is lame. Like, what's the point? And then a few more moments go by, and it hits me, and I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I want to feel like this for the rest of my life. This is it. And we had a great time, just being drunk and doing shenanigans and whatnot. We get back to the cruise ship, and I started to come down, and that same feeling I used to have when I was 12 and getting the heart casts, when that would come down, that I just didn't want it to go away. I wanted, it was like a depression. It was like, this sucks, and I want it to last forever, And so that kind of set us off. That was all we did, on the weekends. We steal our parents' our liquor, or steal their liquor and get shit faced. And then I remember every time we get so drunk, and the next morning I'd be like, I'm never doing this again. This is never happening again. And then the next weekend, doing the exact same thing, and that was just the pattern of my life for the next 10 years or 15 years, however long it was.
So at 14 is like when things really started to like kick off with your disease.
That's when I first drank. It really started to kick off at 16, because the other thing I was talking about with the heart transplant. Now, my mom said this isn't the case, but this is the way that I remember it. I had so I went to this private school, and there was these kids with cardiologists for dads, and they would ask me, when am I going to need another heart transplant? And no one had told me I was going to need another heart transplant. In my head, I made up this thing that my parents had told me, that this heart would last forever, and so I had this big resentment towards them, and I'll get to that. But so I start thinking and like kind of looking online, and like, maybe I do have to get on the heart transplant, but I didn't want to believe that, because it's been 20 years now, I'm still doing just fine. But anyway, so I go to my cardiologist, and he asked me if I have any more questions, and I asked him, how long is this heart going to last? And he tells me straight up, an average transplanted heart lasts 7 years, and I had mine for 5 at that point. So in my mind, I had 2 years to live. That's just kind of the conclusion I jumped to, And so from that point on, I just developed like this super nihilistic, like, screw it, I'll try anything, I'll do anything. So, and that was at 16, and right then I met these guys who were involved with a lot of sketchy stuff, a lot of harder drugs, fighting and stealing and all that stuff. And they taught me how to do all of that. And I embraced it. I wasn't raised that way at all. I was raised to, not be like that. And, but that was like the life I wanted. And so I started doing cocaine, pills, fighting, not very well, but learning, like, stealing. I went to this private school, and girls would just leave their purses out, and I would go and steal their iPhones and their cash, and they knew somebody could sell the iPhone to. And I just, completely opposite of, who I was intended to be, I think. But it's also the experience that I have now to, help the next person. But so I just kind of, from that point on to like 29, 30, just a complete blur. Like, I have like key points of time that I know happen, but like, it's all just very, blurry. But
real quick, I want to back it up just a little bit. When you were talking about, like, when the nurse asked you if you had a family history, and you said that, that I guess she wanted to bring it up to you. Do you have a family history of heart failure?
Mm-mm.
No, it's just you.
Just me.
Wow.
Yeah. They're not, and it was idiopathic, which means they're not sure the cause. They think it's like a viral infection of some sort, like a mosquito bit me that had some viral infection that turned into failing my heart. But I don't know, And that was something that I had to grapple with for a long time, like not knowing why it happened, and
blaming God,
blaming for sure, blaming, being angry at God. I would say I was an atheist, but I never was. I was just so angry at God. I always had a belief in God, and I was angry at him.
I
So
believe
angry.
in him, but he's an asshole.
Yeah, fuck that guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was a big, and I was always just so obsessed with like, I'm gonna die tomorrow. Like, so what's the point? Why not do all this? And I just ran with that for a long time. And it wasn't until later, maybe around like 26, 27, that like I finally started trying to seek that relationship with him again. But I was so intertwined and like couldn't give up the drugs that like I was like trying to have a spiritual connection, but I was so, addicted that like I was at the point where I wanted to stop, but I just couldn't, and but AA is the only thing that's been able to help me stop using drugs, but also build that relationship with God. But anyways, so I ended up getting, or so I hang out with these guys, doing all these drugs. I started getting arrested at a very early age. Got my first DUI at 16. Got my second one like 2 weeks later. And ended up getting kicked out of school. And I went to this, like I said, this private school that my mom taught at. I went there from pre-K to halfway through my senior year. And they finally caught me for stealing and all that stuff. It caught up with me, and they asked me to leave, which was a huge thing. And my mom taught there. She had these long relationships. So did I, and it was really bad. But I ended up getting into another school, and ended up getting into college because I was getting high and doing all this crazy stuff, but I was always able to do pretty well in school with very minimal effort. I've always been a pretty smart guy, and I get into college at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia, and but I get arrested for a heroin possession at 18, so I had to go a semester late, the second semester, and at this point, my heroin addiction is just really took off. I've started shooting it, and in Richmond, the heroin's really, really good. It was good in Wilmington, but it's really good in Richmond. And just a little 18-year-old.
Was that like I'm going there for college because the heroin's awesome?
It wasn't that. Like, I wanted to go. The only place I got in, so that's where I went. But it just happened to be that there was good heroin there too.
Yeah. So you go from that. Like, I know you say you don't remember a lot. It was just like a slow progression of the using from.
Yeah. So
to the heroin, because typically most people are like, that's a big decision to go from
pain pills to heroin.
Or even like the sniffing or taking by mouth to shooting or banging, as people say. So
doing heroin was never a second. Like, I didn't give it any second thought because of my whole perspective on life at that point. Of finding out I was gonna thinking I was gonna die in 2 years, and that whole ordeal. So I was just like, screw it, I'm gonna try heroin. But I was snorting it at that point, and it wasn't until I think I was trying to hold on. I did see shooting stuff as extreme, I guess, but you hang around at a barbershop, you're gonna get your hair cut, as they say. Yeah. And everybody was shooting it. And I was just like, all right, well, and that, they're all telling me I was missing out, I was wasting it or whatever. And I guess they were kind of right. Yeah. If you're gonna do heroin, you might as well shoot it.
What a loser! You're over there sniffing heroin.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, like at the end of when I was trying to stop using, I would justify all these ways to try to stop, and like I would think that snorting heroin instead of shooting heroin was in some way better, which it's not. But so yeah, I just was hanging out with them, and they were all shooting it, so I was like, screw it, I'm gonna shoot it too. And had somebody help me do it for the first time, and kind of figured out how it works, and just ran with it.
Yeah, and for people that don't know, like when you take a drug via shooting it up your veins, That's even I've known a lot of people in the rooms. I've known a few people in the rooms that have died because what happens is it's much easier to get a blood infection
Mm-hmm.
and the blood goes to your heart. And a lot of people get like bacterial vegetation on their heart, which is like endocarditis.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge thing for
Mm-hmm.
IV drug users.
Yeah.
So it's like putting your loner heart at risk even more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I was only shooting heroin. I mean, I was shooting cocaine, meth, Molly, ketamine, anything that you could shoot up, I've shot up. And shooting cocaine with anybody's heart can stop it instantly, you know, because it's just so much pressure on it. But just
just did not care.
Did not care.
Yeah,
well,
because you just rationalize that end of life sentence, into like it doesn't.
Like, I'm gonna die tomorrow, so might as well have fun while I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
Which is so not how I live today. It's the complete opposite.
Most people, you look at you on the surface level, they'd be like,
yeah,
this guy would never shot drugs.
Oh yeah, I'm a completely different person today, physically, mentally, spiritually. I got my buddy to show me my intake picture, and I just looked. I was like gray, literally like gray in color, and I weighed 115 pounds or something. And yeah. So yeah, I'm in Richmond, and I get 3 years of college done. Like I said, I could always kind of just skate by and get pretty decent grades, and but eventually, heroin and other drugs just became the most important thing in my life, and I dropped out. And around that same time, I met this girl, and we were together for 5 years, but she was a nice girl, had never really done too many drugs. I mean, she, drank and partied a little bit, but I think the first night we hung out, I got her to smoke crack. And, I mean, she was very willing. It's not like I got her to. She was, she was down. And from that moment on, we kind of just became running buddies, and I had the codependency to go along with the addiction. So it just really took off. Because I didn't feel completely isolated and lonely like I did at the end of things. In the big book, it talks about we know loneliness such as few do. I know what they're talking about. I know that loneliness, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And now it's the complete opposite. I have so many friends, such a great fellowship. But anyway, so yeah, I meet this girl, and we just are. I get involved in like the music festival scene and doing a lot of LSD, a lot of Molly, and but also smoking crack. And I think I kind of tried. I don't know if I was on Suboxone at this point. I think I was, but I was still doing everything else under the sun. And but then I think I get off of it because we start doing heroin together, and I moved back. I guess it reaches ahead, and I moved back to Wilmington, where I'm from. She goes back to Maine for a little bit, and then she moves back with me. And we just continue our behaviors, and it gets even worse. And then we break up, and she goes back to Maine. And I remember being so depressed. I put so much identity and of who I was into that relationship and into her. And I remember just sleeping for like 3 weeks straight. Just couldn't get out of bed, and just to pee and maybe eat like some bread and go back to bed. And it's around that time where I kind of have the realization of how bad my drug use is. I mean, I kind of knew all along, what the deal was, but I just didn't care. But I kind of have that's the point where I start seeking God again. But I'm so intertwined with, and I know I get on Suboxone at that point, but I'm also, selling them and smoking crack and doing other things.
And how did you get on the Suboxone? It's not like,
I think I just went into a doctor and, a Suboxone doctor, and did, to go to a therapy session every week or month or whatever it is, and pass drug tests, which I would get because I couldn't never pass a drug test.
Yeah.
I would either drink for probation or whatever. I would drink a shit ton of water, so it was just water, but then they would see that it was just diluted and not, not real pee. So then I would get other people's pee, and I would put it in the freezer because it would keep it. And then when it was time, I'd put it in the microwave, and I would put hand warmers around it, and I'd put it in like my waistband, or like I don't know how I configured it in there, but and sometimes the nurses wouldn't come in and watch, and sometimes they would, and sometimes I'd just be so brazen I would just pull it out and do it with them right behind me, because they weren't. It wasn't like probation where they're actually looking at you, But so I get to like I said, I get to the point where I want to stop, but I just can't, and I think that for me, what I've realized is it doesn't matter what the substance is. If I'm putting something in my body and it's changing how I feel and my connection to God, it's going to have an effect on me. I'm going to start feeling uncomfortable. I'm going to not be comfortable in my skin and not be, able to talk to people and interact. I couldn't, at the end there, I couldn't even get out of bed without having some sort of substance to put in my body. I couldn't react to life. I couldn't walk out of my house. Like I could, but I was extremely uncomfortable and extremely introverted, and just, you put all these drugs into your body for so long, it just eats away at your soul. So you're left with not much, you're just like, it's this hole that just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And, the only thing that I've known that can fill that hole is Alcoholics Anonymous and a connection with my higher power. So where was I? Was
doing the Suboxone at those
Yeah.
what are the band? What are those things called? The shows.
What?
I think you said you were doing like shows, hippie shows or something.
Oh yeah, the festivals. That was in Richmond. I kind of stopped doing that, but I started going to music concerts again. Like I just went to Widespread Panic, and it's funny, like the music's great, but everybody there is fucked up, and it's me and my wife just sober, just not affected by all of that. There's just alcohol everywhere, people offering drugs, and it just doesn't have an effect on me now. I have that defense now. So yeah, I'm doing the Suboxone, and I'm meeting with this therapist, and he's the one that helps me like start to sort of seek a relationship with God again. I don't know, he was just able to kind of get through to me, which is the only one that I've never had success with therapists or psychologists or any of that, except for him. But my disease is just too powerful at that point. I could have all the want to try to change, but if I don't have the program or action in place to do that, I can't. It's just too powerful. And so, over the course of my drinking and using, I have 5 DUIs. I have a heroin possession charge, overdosed 3 times, total of 7 cars. And, all these consequences, a normal person probably after one of those things would say, this is, I probably need to straighten my life up or, get things into check. But, me, like, I would have a brief moment of clarity and say, this is crazy. I gotta stop and change. And then a few moments would go by, or minutes or days, and it's like it never even happened. The insanity of the disease is I can't bring into memory what happened a few days back or a few hours back. and I just repeat the same behaviors over and over, and it's just a vicious cycle that happens over and over. And unless you have the awareness and the action to deal with that, it's just going to keep happening. And that's what the sad thing about addiction is. It's like I didn't realize that, that's kind of a simple concept to understand, but I didn't realize that that's what was happening. And I feel like there's so many people out there that it's the same thing. And it's the with the help of a sponsor, he pointed that out to me and reading the big book. And so I managed to stay out of trouble for a long time. I got in my third DUI at probably 23 or something, and it wasn't until like 28 or 29 I got my fourth one. And it's all so with like heroin and coke and whatever else I could always kind of maintain. I was miserable, and I hated my life when I wasn't on those things. But whenever I took Xanax or Klonopin or any benzodiazepine, that's when I would get arrested or,
that's, you go into the shadow realm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That's when the really bad consequences would happen. And it's funny, like I would take Xanax and all of a sudden I want to drive a car, blacked out for whatever reason, or steal, or, and it's the same case with a lot of people,
I can relate.
Yeah. It's so dumb, and like it's such a weird drug, but I used to just love them so much.
Yeah.
That was
the waking up every day. I would get the calls, not to interrupt you. I'd get the calls and be like, "You know what you did last night?" And I'm like, and that immediate feeling of like shame and guilt would like just wash over me, because so many times before have I done something incredibly embarrassing or like stupid or all these different things, and then it would just but I couldn't stop. I just couldn't stop.
So I get arrested for my fourth DUI at like 28 or something, and which forces me into I've been to rehab 3 or 4 times before that.
Yeah. So when did the rehab stint started to take place?
The first rehab stint was at 18, after I got arrested for that heroin possession charge. And it's it's funny, at 18, I never been to an NA or AA meeting, and I thought just that they wouldn't work for me. I thought I knew best, and so I went to a non-AA or NA 12-step based program, which was like summer camp. It was a great time, like we just hung out at the lake, and
it's like a more Christian based, or
no, it's like a choice based. They say it's all about your choices, or what I remember, but it obviously didn't work. I think I got
you.
It might work for some people. But because I got back and was just started doing drugs that first night back. I remember. I go to Wilmington Treatment Center in North Carolina, and that was the first time that I, speakers would come in and I would actually listen, and I would get this, and it still happens to this day, like this resonation in my body, like these chills, like just like this. It's like pretty euphoric feeling, and which I believe is the touch of God. When they would say something that felt like God speaking through them to me, that I could really truly relate to. And I even went up to a guy afterwards and asked him to sponsor me, and he told me to call him when I get out, and which I did. But I also got the number of this one guy who sold cocaine and heroin, just as a contingency plan,
in case it don't work out.
Yeah, exactly. Because I had deleted all my numbers on my phone, because this was the last time, like I had done so many times before. So I get out and I call the sponsor, and I stay sober for a couple of days, but that number's just burning a hole in my pocket. I know it's there, and I haven't done any real work, and so I call him too. And so I'm driving to Jacksonville, North Carolina, 45 minutes to there, 45 minutes back, and getting the stuff. I'm coming back and just snorting it, because I don't want to shoot it, because I'm trying to control this thing. And so I'm going to, but I'm going to meetings, high as hell, pinpoint pupils, nodding out probably. And I'm also meeting with this guy, which is insane, but at least I'm trying to, take some action, and I got one foot in the door and, going in the right direction. But do that for a few weeks, and then I'm at my weed dealer's house, and he has some Xanax. So I can't say no to that. And I get those, and, it's 2 weeks later, and I get arrested for my fifth DUI, which is a crazy story.
Considering you drove here.
Well, that's the thing. I still have a license in Florida somehow.
Wow.
Yeah. God is doing for me what I can't do for myself. So that fifth DUI, I'm driving to the hood at 3 a.m. to get a stem for the crack I have, and which is the pipe to smoke it out of. And I get pulled over. And, whenever I was on Xanax, I was a real good talker. I could talk to girls, just talk to people. And I talk my way out of it. He lets me drive away, and I'm, so fucked up. And so I'm driving away, and then, like 3 minutes later, he pulls me back over. He's like, "I can't believe I let you go. You're all over the road, blah, blah, blah." And
like how the cops sit behind you and you pull off, and you're like,
yeah. And I don't even realize he's behind me. I'm just so far gone at that point.
Thinking I got away with that.
Yeah. And the smart thing would have been to drive back home, but I was still going to go to the hood and get, so anyways, he arrests me, and I'm pretty far gone at that point, and I get to the jail. I just know this from reading the police report. Apparently I was taken, I guess he didn't search me because I still had crack in my car, and I had stuff in my pockets. And so I was in the little holding part before you get into the main jail. And I was like taking all the drugs out and eating them. And I guess they saw me. I'm not really sure what happened, but I woke up in the hospital, handcuffed and shackled to the hospital bed with a hematoma. So I'm thinking I got really unruly, and they beat the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Hit me over the head with a club. And,
unruly.
Yeah. And that's a low place to be, to wake up, have no idea how you got there. You're literally handcuffed and shackled. There's a cop sitting to my right, and I'm just like, what the hell, And had that moment of clarity, like, this is insane. I can't keep doing this. Something has to change. And my parents came and bailed me out like they always do. I had that moment of clarity, but as soon as I had that freedom and I got back to my house, I was frantically looking around for the rest of my cocaine. And that's just how this disease works, I had that traumatic, crazy event, that moment of clarity, and then it's like it never even happened.
Yeah.
But fortunately, this is my fifth DUI, second within a month, and I'm looking at a year in prison. So I got a lawyer, and in order to avoid going to prison for that time, he said he can try to get time served from rehab. So I come to Beaches Recovery here in Jax Beach, great place. Something was just different that time. I had reached a pretty low bottom. And it was just like, what else do I have to lose but truly try this thing? And by this thing, I mean AA. And so I have the speakers start coming in, and I have those feelings again of that resonation and that relatability. And, I'm really listening. And my buddy puts me in touch with a sponsor and start working some steps. So work a very thorough 4-step, and I begin to have a spiritual awakening. The spiritual experience kind of happened a little bit later, but the spiritual awakening starts happening, and I'm feeling great. I do 6 months there in the rehab, and
the Beaches Recovery, is that like a rehab or a halfway house?
They have a detox, and they have it's a rehab. It's not like true inpatient rehab. I mean, I guess it is, but you live in apartment style housing, and then you go to a center for counseling and that kind of thing. But
so the detox in house, is that like a medical detox?
The detox is a different facility. It's Tides Edge Detox. It's it's like a true detox where you're in there, you can't leave.
Yeah. So when you went to the detox,
Yeah,
did
for
they
30 days.
for 30 days in detox, and they put you on? Did they have you taking medications or anything like that?
A couple, but I really didn't want to take anything.
Yeah.
No, definitely no Suboxone, no anything that was gonna fuck me up.
Yeah. Like Librium or
yeah, I think I took something for sleep,
mm-hmm.
whatever that was, but that's about it.
Okay.
I knew even then I knew I had to be completely sober if I wanted any chance at a happy life.
For sure. Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
The 30 days is like a long time. Is that everybody that goes to beaches recovery does 30 days?
No. It's just I think just because of my history and my heart transplant and everything in my position. I don't think it was quite 30 days, but it was like between 25 to 30, something like that.
Still a lot.
Yeah. But so yeah, get out of there, and they let you, once you've been there at beaches like a few weeks, they let you get mentorship, which is where you can go out on like a couple of the days of the week and actually be in real life, which I think is very beneficial. Because if you're gonna use drugs, you can do it on those days, but I didn't, I remember just feeling like when I was out and like walking around and walking on the beach or just doing whatever, just feeling these moments of just pure like bliss and gratitude that I was where I was. And I still feel those today, just like I remember I was sitting out in my backyard and it was a beautiful day and the breeze was blowing, and just so grateful that I'm here where I am today. So yeah, I get the sponsor, but once I get out of the treatment facility, I kind of just don't do anything. I don't really go to meetings. I'm isolating again. I'm sober, not using drugs, but like that pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization starts creeping back in, and I was probably pretty close to using, but I didn't. And a buddy of mine who worked at beaches put me in touch with a buddy of his who is my current sponsor. And we did the steps in a super intensive way. And that's when I got the real results. I actually had a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience. And I did really well. But then I met my wife. So she was my girlfriend at the time, but I met her and she had a couple days, or like a week. I had like 6 months. She had like a week.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
That's difficult.
Yeah.
That's difficult.
Well, you can just say she had some pretty serious untreated alcoholism, and she was, really crazy. And so she's battling with the whole demon of not, trying not to drink, and so then she starts drinking, and I didn't. And long story short, we ended up getting some Delta 8 one day.
What's Delta 8?
It's like the legal weed gummies that they sell in the smoke shop, which fuck you up. I mean, it's like real.
Is it THC gummies?
It's some variant of a THC molecule. So it's not pure THC, but they like changed one of the things on the molecule where it's legal somehow, and it gets you high just like THC does. We were trying to get CBD, and it ended up being Delta 8. And we start doing that, and it's really insane because I was still trying to go to AA meetings, and I was still sponsoring a guy, and I was taking these things, and I was like, this is awesome. Like, I thought if I ever took another drug, I'd be off to the races, and I'd be shooting heroin again and smoking crack and all that, but, that didn't happen. I was still going to work, still going to AA meetings, saying I was sober. But then I'd come home at night and eat some Delta 8, and we also started doing Kratom, which is an opioid root thing.
Something like, yeah. I'm a little more, I've heard of that at least.
Yeah. But it's insane because I was trying to justify that these are like natural occurring substances. I'm taking them for anxiety and all the insane.
And so is cocaine.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything is naturally
and
occurring.
Opium and heroin and everything. But anyway, so going to meetings and sharing like I'm not taking these things, and eventually, I was fine for like a month, but slowly that uncomfortability, that being uncomfortable in my own skin, not able to communicate or be around people, and all that started to come back in, and I realized that, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter what the substance is. If I'm putting something in my body and it's changing the way I feel and it's cutting off that conduit to God, I'm going to slip back into that pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization. And so I, on 12/30/21, December 30th, 2021, I stopped taking those things. But I wasn't going to tell anybody, because I had this 1.5 years of sobriety. It's like this huge ego trip. Like, I don't want to throw away that length of time because I just had so much, worth wrapped up into it. So my wife knew, or fiance at the time, but I wasn't telling my sponsor for sure. I wasn't telling my friends. And I was going to meetings still, and it was just eating away at me. That guilt and shame was just eating away. And one night I just couldn't take it. And I called my sponsor and I said, I was completely honest with him. I told him all about it. He's like, meet me at San Marco Club at 9 a.m. tomorrow, which is AA Clubhouse. Okay. And which I did. And we're talking, and he's like, it's all about intent. Were you trying to change the way you feel, or were you really taking it for anxiety and for sleep and whatnot? And I thought about it, and I was like, I was trying to change how I feel. And he's like, well, that's a relapse. I was like, well, damn. He's like, I thought you were going to co-sign my bullshit.
Come on, man.
So I went into San Marco, the meeting there, the AA meeting there, and I was completely honest. I shared about the whole thing, what I've been doing, the experience that I just had, and after that meeting, the weight off my shoulders that was lifted was just amazing. I felt awesome. Because the whole thing about this program is to thy own self be true. You can tell everybody you're sober and still be using drugs under the table, and the only person you're lying to is yourself. It doesn't matter. It's all about what you're doing for yourself, and so I did that, and I really dove into the program of AA. The whole 1.5 years, I never had a service commitment. You hear about how you're supposed to have service commitments, and I didn't do all the suggestions that were suggested to me. I had sponsees, but I was sponsoring guys out of ego. Like look at me, look at how many sponsors I have. Look at all the people I'm helping. I wasn't doing it like I do today to just truly help that person so that they can hopefully live the life that that I live. And so to this day, I take a meeting in the River Region every Wednesday night. I open and close the Wolfpack meeting, which is AA meeting. And I sponsor guys out of just love and compassion that they can hopefully get this thing, and in doing so, I also stay sober myself. That's the beauty of any 12-step program. You come in broken and bruised, and there's somebody to pick you up and help you out and show you how to live. And it's my duty and our duty to continue that and to repeat that. And that's how this thing works. It's the paradox of AA. You gotta get it to give it away. So that's what I try to do today. But yeah, my life now is it's crazy, man. It's surreal. At the end there, I was just so lonely, living by myself. My only friends were drugs and alcohol. Any relationship I did have besides my parents was just transactional. You know, they wanted something from me or I wanted something from them. Relationships I have today are there's none of that. You know, it's true just relationships. I have true brothers in this program that I would do anything for, and they would do the exact same for me. You know, I have such a big fellowship of a beautiful wife that I met from this program that I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. That, you know, I truly believe God put us each other in each other's lives.
Did she stop using the other stuff as well?
She's completely sober now.
Yeah,
she's been sober for she stopped shortly after I did.
Yeah,
so she's been sober like a year now too. And we have this beautiful life together. You know, I have all the material things have come back 10 times over. I have the house, the car, the job, the money, but all of that, you know, fails in comparison to the peace of mind I have today and the spiritual connection I have today. That's what I was always searching for with drugs and alcohol was I just wanted to feel okay. You know, I wanted to feel, you know, the intrusive thoughts to stop and the you know, my mind to be at peace. And, you know, that's what I have today from this program. And it just takes a few simple actions every day and relying on a higher power and being of service to others. You know, it's very simple, but it can get easily complicated, you know? And yeah, I'm just super grateful.
Yeah, man. Well, you have an incredible story that I'm sure will change many lives. I always think about that when you were sharing about the peace and serenity. What I found of being in a 12-step program is the purpose that it provides for my life, you know? Like that being able to help change somebody else's life, you know? I'm sure even like with you and your wife that that you getting honest and getting off of that stuff in some way, I'm sure gave her the courage to probably do the same thing, you know? And it just happens like that with countless others that being in the room sharing. Hopefully even somebody that's listening to this podcast will hear your story because it is an incredible story. It's an incredible story. I really appreciate you coming on, man, and sharing your experience, strength, and hope.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you, buddy.
Awesome.